Good afternoon from Australia. Richard Miller, Never Not Here. The saga continues. I don't know if saga is a good word or a bad word, but anyhow, it sounds like a very interesting trip, and that's what I'm doing. And meeting so many people. And then when you do enough of that, you might even start to think that that's the point of life, or somehow that is a very interesting part of life, is our relationships. And spreading them out must feel good. It's feeling good to me, so, and I hope it feels good to you, because in a way you're here. At least you're here in a more passive sense. And I think your ears are important, because without them, well, the whole project goes to toast, right? So it's not even a project in a way, it's a voyage, because I'm not really trying to store up some work. Unless you guys want to do it, you can have it. And I want you to meet everyone I meet in Australia, and I want you to get the feel of it. Maybe I've got some shots of the land too, in different parts, and it's pretty amazing. It's not like anything I've seen. And so anyhow, the land feels different, and something is opening in me, and let's just say it's a sensitivity that I'm noticing. The land feels different, and I never thought land, the people feel different, but they're of the land, right? I'm not so sure. The continent is different. The sky is different. I can't put my finger on it. But out of all that comes a sensitivity to feel. And some people, sometimes we have fun, we laugh, we jump and shout, and our eyes bug out. Sometimes we speak with people that are incredibly sensitive, and they have a great listening just in their being. And so I think you're going to really like this interlude, and help me welcome Parijat Wisma. Thanks so much for coming.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So we talk a lot about stillness, and we don't really feel it so much. And in our discussions. And coming to Australia, I don't know whether I'm just blown away, or this stillness is everywhere.
Stillness in the landscape or with people?
Everywhere. Because I feel it with people, and I feel it in myself, so then it's everywhere.
I think, for me it depends what you mean with that. Because there is a real peacefulness and stillness that happens inside. That from that place, you can really be there for somebody else. And then there is a stillness where everything's shut off. And you're not really present with what is out there, you're just present inside. So I'm not quite sure what you want to talk about.
Stillness that shut off. Well, I don't know, I wouldn't think it's sterile. I would say I was engaged, an engaged stillness, let's say.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that gets it across.
Well, that's very sweet.
Yeah. Well, I'm realizing that that's the only way to listen, from a stillness. And because I'm hearing more because of this stillness, right?
That's right. Then you don't have an agenda. You don't want to hear what you set out to.
I'm not trying to get verified, right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to discover, if anything, if I'm trying to do that,
Yeah.
I think I am. But I'm just letting this process move on, because it is kind of a discovery process that I put myself into for these years that I talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just say, okay, that's the process. That's kind of like, if there's any agenda, that's it, just to let that process roll and be comfortable with it. And I've learned to be comfortable with it, so then I don't get frantic, and I bring a lot of stuff so that I can confront a lot of opportunities, let's call them, because I can meet with people in wide different ways, and somehow I can make something artful out of it, and something that catches the feeling. And I haven't really studied that too much, but I just found I could do it, and so then I'm satisfied with that. You know.
So, what would you like to discover from your talking with me?
I'm interested in listening, because I think we really and we don't listen to ourselves for so much of our lives, and we don't listen to those around us, and we don't listen to the notes that are actually ringing all the time, and we step right over them, and so then everything seems to be mysterious and veiled, but yet here we are, just not listening. We're not subtle at all.
Well, there are different ways of doing that. Like there is one where I really want to get to hear your story or whatever is going on for you, or when you want to really hear what's going on for me, or when we're just here together, where we don't need to talk about what's going on. We can just be together and enjoy each other's company. Like in my work, listening is one of the most important things that a student can learn. Because when somebody comes who is not well, physically, emotionally, energetically, then there is a story. That person has a story. And if we listen long enough, and not just to what they say, but also what we do through body reading, using kinesiology, we hear what that body has to say, why, where the blockages are, and it also gives us clues as to what we can do to unblock that. So listening is, if I have an agenda, I want to show you what I can do, then I miss the point. Because whatever that person needs is not necessarily what I would want to show someone I can do, because they may need something very, very simple. So it really goes into being present and doing the listening. You're quite right. But that is different from sitting with a friend and we're having a talk about this and that and the other thing, and I want to hear what you have to say, and you may want to hear what I have to say.
I definitely want to hear what you have to say, and I'm perfectly willing to, tell you what's going on with me as far as I can see it, and value your insight also. And of course, when we say listening, we're not just talking. And you mentioned hearing someone's story, but you mentioned something deeper, like somehow reading the body and knowing what's right on with that story and what's kind of like shielded or somehow deflecting from that story. Something is deflecting. Many stories are a way of kind of avoiding or kind of jumping over. Mm-hmm. And I feel that you can read right through that. I feel transparent to you.
Well, we develop a lot of coping mechanisms. I don't have a problem with people doing that or doing even their stories. It's the way they've learned to cope. And it's like, in all the years I've been doing my work, I've never met a person who gets up in the morning and says, today I'm going to do things that are bad for me. Today I'm going to say things to my children that are going to give them emotional traumas. People don't set out to do that. It's like they don't know how to do it differently. And in the stress of their experience, they find a way to cope. And so there's no judgment on how they do that. But if they're not happy or if they get sick through doing that, then if I can help them undo those blockages, I'm really happy to do so.
So many people are so hard on their bodies, and they're so hard on their lives and their relationships. And really, of course, then there's also addictive substances and so on that really even people know, even simple things like smoking, they know that they're really hard on themselves, but for some reason they go right back at it.
Most smokers that I've met have, like, if they could just drop it like that, they'd be quite happy to be non-smokers. but they don't believe in themselves, in their ability to actually carry it through, because maybe they've tried a couple of times and then they fell back into it. And so they find justifications for not changing. And, you know, you can't totally sort of say it's the same for everybody, but addictive patterns in my work tend to look at underlying patterns of not feeling worthy enough of taking excellent care of yourself for some reason or other. And sometimes it's even, you know, messages we got in the womb, early childhood experiences, and it's like not treasuring what we are enough. But then once the addiction has taken place, I understand that there are lots of layerings. Like with muscle feedback, a person may come and say, I want to stop smoking. So you muscle test, you put your arm out and you test, and they say, I want to stop smoking. Body says no. I want to keep smoking. The body says yes. Even their head says, I want to stop. And then the next thing I ask, do you want to do something about it? No. I don't want to do something about it. That's true. So this is what I call putting a layer on things. Then I want to let go of the layering I've done. Some people will say, no, I want to keep it. And one of the deepest works that I've done was with a girl with an eating disorder. She had 5 layers.
Wow.
Which meant, like, I don't want to do something about having a problem. I don't want to do something about not wanting to do something about it. I don't want to, 5 times layered. And so just doing some counseling with that person is not going to do anything, because it's not touching the distress that went into covering things over.
What about this? Because so much behavior seems gratifying when you're doing it, and it's only the side effects or the after effects, like a hangover or something like that, or like some kind of depletion from a run or a strong run with drugs. And then the after effect always feels bad, but then in the first puff of a smoke probably feels great. And then it's kind of like a mental thing that you want to quit, because you think, oh, the after effects are always bad. And but yet the craving is not about the after effects, it's about the initial effect.
Yeah, but see, that's once the addiction has taken place in the body, the person is no longer in charge, the addiction's in charge. The addiction craves and drives the person into doing more of it. They're no longer driving their own bus. Why else would they get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and drive 50 kilometers to buy some cigarettes? It's the addiction, the drive that pushes them to that place.
I spent a decade as a foreigner. It was a nice time. I was in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But I was underemployed, because I somehow couldn't really swing in there, for various reasons. But I was okay. I was surviving, but I was thinking that's a heck of a way to spend a decade. But so I can really appreciate that people, if they have a creative outlet for their energy, I think most addictions would just drop away. But when you have a huge energy and nowhere to really absorb it, then you really, there's this feeling like, what am I going to do with this energy? It can lash out, or somehow I can suppress it or stuff it.
I have no judgments on any of that. I just know that there was a time in that person's life when that was a choice to begin with, and then that choice became an addiction. And to get back from there to here, there needs to be some healing done on a deeper level. Because, not everyone who has one try of a cigarette becomes addicted. It's not like the kind of innocent trial of, oh, what are people doing? I'm going to try it. Or the person who gets drunk becomes an alcoholic. There is another choice to repeat that experience and to get into the space that the addiction gives them, which basically means I don't deal with what's really going on for me. I'm having a break. I'm going into this other
That's a good way to say it, having a break.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, I don't work with a lot of people with addictions, but I do understand what drives them. And I think it's not as simple as... See, that might interest you. It's like, that's only the result. The addiction is the result. But what drives to do things and not do things? It's how they feel. And, and that feeling can be, I don't have enough friends, or I'm not successfful, or I'm not lovable enough. Yeah,
that's what I was saying. It was like a lack of a creative outlet for their energy.
Yeah.
So then with a creative outlet would come friends and associates and collaborators, and would come and a sense of doing a job that was value to somebody, and then plus you would be able to have a cash flow and a flow of energy which would support a family and support children and give you freedom, and I mean, it would be it's a huge thing.
But see, there's your feelings, but what gives you your feelings is the way you think about things, your attitudes, your like, if you basically, like, say we take that example, you go into a country where you don't know anybody. The way you think about those experiences gives you feelings. So one can be of wonder. I wonder who I'm going to meet. I'm going to learn that language. I'm going to go to places where I meet some of the local people, and it's all an adventure. And another person, like I'm thinking of somebody I know who went to another country and 3 months later came back here and said, it's not for me. I didn't meet people. I didn't have a good experience. And so it's that often we look at the result of something and want to change that. But that's not where the real issue is. The issue is up with how we feel about things, how we think about things. And then you say, well, why do we think in a certain way? And this is where we go into what I call the brain files. It's the learned things that we've absorbed through living with people, through, from our family, from our peers, from our culture as well. Gives us a way of thinking. And then we choose how we want to think as well. That gives us our feelings, which makes us act or not act, which gives us results. So if we try to change results, we're not really getting there real fast.
You see, when I was in Italy, I had all kinds of results, and sometimes I knew people, sometimes I didn't. When I traveled, sometimes everyone was taking me in, sometimes I was quiet for 50% of the time, and on my own. But always underlying my trips were that I'm free. I chose this.
Yeah.
And if I was an Italian citizen, I probably would have said, oh man, look at the pollution, look at the traffic, look at all this and that and the other. And I would have felt a captive of it. But somehow I felt like, okay, well, I just came here on my own, So then these Italians have a lot of problems, but I didn't take them on as my problems. And so then I had a very positive attitude about it.
Well, when you have a positive attitude, you tend to take more actions that give you results you enjoy. Your attitude is a very big motivator, I believe. And so when I work with people they come to me with their results they don't like. So their health has suffered, they feel depressed, they have emotional, or they have not enough energy, or they have issues. But we're not just treating that. We say, well, that's the result of what? What needs to change to give you a different result? And so some people need to heal life experiences that made them believe things that are not even true. Makes them believe that they're not good enough. Who says? Somebody said that to them, and they believed it. So they started to live it. some people just don't know how to eat. They need to look at how to nourish and look after their body better.
You know, here's a good question, you know. Can we really take care of ourselves, love ourselves, cherish ourselves, and really honor ourselves before we ever get sick? Because it seems like, or sick, or before we ever experience any problems, because it seems like as a youngster, we feel so immortal, like, and we don't have any benchmarks of what the body can't take, you know. And no matter what we do, we wake up in the morning and everything's okay, right? And we just say, eh. So why should we do any different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that something? Do you know young people that just totally take care of themselves and have never been sick or ill? Or
you know, sickness is not even something that should never happen. I think the body does a lot of house cleaning when it gets a fever, for example, and has a good clean out.
Definitely.
And sometimes we need to take a rest, and I think it needs to be something reasonably natural, looking after ourselves rather than our whole focus. And I think a lot of my students actually get better and better at looking after themselves. It's just certain things they won't do.
That's well said, you know, that it should be just reasonably natural and not our whole focus. Because some people really get into, like, oh my God, they get every kind of additive and vitamin and, you know, health, live food, and I don't know, every kind of. Seems like it's worse than the addiction, worse than the illness.
Yeah. It's not the only thing that gets a person well. See, I love the new biology, because kinesiology, I've been involved in kinesiology 26 years, and I've seen miraculous changes in people after an emotional healing, for example, where their health improved dramatically afterwards. And I understand that the cells will only work if we are in a sense of safety. Like, my stress level's not at the place where my body goes on survival. It's like my system needs to be in a peaceful enough place to take all the nutrients into the cells and throw out all the garbage. As my stress level rises, the whole body actually goes into a survival place. And we understand that even energy shifts from your hollow organs to your solid organs, and there's a whole kind of defense the body goes into, where it says, now I'm not house cleaning, I'm just surviving. And so if a person's in that survival place and they put lots and lots of vitamins in there, they're not going to do much. That person needs meditation, or, you know, relaxation, or some joy, some laughter, and some way of coming out of that high stress level. And you know, I think love is probably the biggest healer, and joy. There is some joy, really joyful things. If we start looking for them, they're around us all the time. But when you're in the noticing, into experiencing that joy, that is as important as the vitamin. But if you have one without the other, then somewhere it's not quite working.
I've sensed that myself, you know, and I haven't really. Some of my friends and relatives go from one fad to another, trying to get it all figured out, you know. And I say, well, how about the thoughts you have? You know, check those out, because, like, maybe you're playing the wrong radio station there, and these cells don't know what they're doing. You know, they're not coping too well with that music, and somehow that always gets, you know, that seems more important to me. And so then I'll you know, play around with water and play around with different things, but somehow I feel like the natural, something natural about me could probably do everything that I'm trying to do in a roundabout way.
Well, we're born with this incredible power to heal ourselves, and that's what, when you said earlier on about young people, you know, they just wake up in the morning and they're okay. It's their body actually repairs and renews really fast in a baby you have new skin every other day you have new skin. That's why it's so soft. And then as we get older, that all gets a little slower. So I think the ability to repair gets a bit slower. And so we can do a lot more damage before we do the repair as we get older. And I think that's why young people get away with a lot. They also have a lot more reserves. We sort of slowly wear out the reserves as well.
That's what I'm saying, is like we're always thinking, like, if you would take what I learned, you will last to be 150, whether it's true or not. Of course, they're not going to take it because it's all conceptual at that level until it starts to become an experience that something is damaging. And maybe people are lucky when they're sick early. Sick, just meaning, and doesn't necessarily mean disease or things, but just somehow when something breaks down.
Yeah. Gives you time to connect back in and go like, okay, slow down, take some time out.
You can find the honor in the appreciation and the gratitude for the whole mechanism you're endowed with and its relationships, and you have a reason to listen. See, because I would say, okay, for so many years I wasn't able to listen or hear myself. I wasn't really able to judge. There was no metrics or measuring stick, either quantitative or qualitative, really, that I could open my eyes to.
See, that's one of the things I love about kinesiology. You can actually check the energy pathways to your muscles and organs, and those pathways will show an imbalance days, weeks, months, maybe even years before a disease develops in the body. So a person developing a kidney disease may have a weakened kidney meridian for a long, long time beforehand. So you can actually look at balancing your energy system, and if consistently, like if say every month you do a balance, and every time the same meridian shows up, you could actually go and explore, I wonder why that is. Am I eating the wrong foods? That's in a very simplistic way. What we do with what I call a full protocol, we simply say, what is it that you need to be in abundant health? Where is the stress that we need to take away, and where is the strengthening that you need? And that is very often, emotional healing is a big part of that.
I totally get it. I totally get that, and I would have said the same thing, although I wouldn't have been able to really listen or judge it. Somehow I have that on a belief structure, right? And I know that emotional that's what I'm saying. What are your thought patterns, and where are your constrictions? And I totally believe that, like, heart attacks and cancers are operating for decades, before they pop out. And somehow I don't really, I don't know. I haven't. When you said full protocol, I thought, yes.
Well, see, but on the other hand, there are other influences too that are not necessarily people who've chosen those things necessarily, like they've been poisoned by their amalgam fillings, or they grew up and had no education about good food, bad food, and they've just had bad habits. That can cause those problems too. So I've come away from really believing that anything causes what is, because for each person it's the combination of factors that led to them being in the place where they are. And there is, there's nutrition, there is, what if you never exercise and move your body? Everything gets stagnant in it. So being physical is part of our health and wellness too. The energetics. What if somebody sleeps next to a power box and has no idea that what they can't see can damage them, and their energy system every night for 8 hours is disturbed? So environmental reasons and the health of the mother when she was pregnant with you has affected your constitution and how well you are.
Yeah, her belief systems
her
and her
belief
stress
systems,
levels
her
and
stress
everything, you know.
levels,
But somehow
her
that
toxicity.
somehow that you can overcome, I think, because, you know, like we said, you get new skin every couple of days or whatever you said. As a baby, you know, you get new. You're regenerating so fast that, I mean, somehow maybe if you're taken out of that pressure, I don't know. Well, there's nothing you can do about it anyhow. As far as how you were born.
Yeah, but those kinds of things you can heal too, if you know that they're there, that they're affecting you.
But the one you said was a sleep sanctuary. If you could somehow make a sleep sanctuary that doesn't have a lot of electromagnetic radiation, it doesn't have a lot of toxic carpets or elements that are off-gassing or fresh paints and all that stuff, you know, and because that's something you're horizontal and vulnerable in 8 hours a day for your whole life. I mean that.
Yeah.
And your amalgam fillings and this, that, and the other. And these are good.
You know, we can go down that track of all the things that we do. You know, the vaccinations we put in people.
Yeah, that's too late. You know, I already got those. I was in the army. I got shot up a lot of times.
Yeah. But we do a lot of things to the body, and it's surprising that we're doing as well as we do.
Yeah, that's what I say. We're doing a lot of things without listening.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you could be a health professional and listen to people and then just coach them what to do, you know, but also we could teach listening if there was a way. I don't know. How would that
Listening
happen?
to your own body?
Well, like listening to our environment, listening to our body, listening to our friends and our relationships and seeing where they're off, and we could all be listeners, right?
Yeah, that comes with a level of growing awareness within you that you are responsible for your thoughts, are responsible for the actions you take, and for the, you know, the way you treat people, the environment. You're responsible for you.
Yeah.
And as you do that, and if we take on more of that, we also interact on a different level. You know, it's like, I understand that I emit a frequency of, you know, that does not just affect my body. So if I'm angry, then it's not just my liver that's angry and my muscles that feel it. It's my whole body feels it within, you know, a moment like that, via my heartbeat and via my acupuncture system. That doesn't finish there, so I transmit it like a radio station, and so I'm responsible for that. So if I can learn to transmit a much more joyful frequency, then I actually contribute to my environment.
Comes to me to say we can be responsible for that. In other words, we're responsible, but if we ignore it, you know, then of course it's gone to us, right? And then, you know, that's the opportunity to be responsible for it. And then the thing that's kind of like a little bit perplexing is, okay, when you say I radiate, well then we can really get into like I'm getting radiated on, you know, from the others, and then we're running all the time trying to change our environment and trying to get away from certain people and trying to...
That is a really interesting one, because I have to address it with my work and my students especially, because I'm going to reach across and touch you. Now we're definitely connected, but even at this distance that we're sitting, my energy bubble and yours have an area where we're mixing, where we're connecting. And there is a law in physics that you could appreciate that says if you put two vibrating energy systems next to each other, after a while, the weaker will start to go in sync with the stronger. So, what happens? This is really interesting. In the sort of work I do, for a long time it puzzled me how many people burnt out. And it was this time when, you know, just a good friend couldn't work anymore, and she was just really, really good at her job. And then I met another woman who was working in women's sexual assault, and she was really, really good at her work. And she said, one more woman in crisis and I fall apart. And I realized that traumatic energy is really full on. And if you see people, like say if I'm with you and you're in despair, that's pretty powerful energy. And for an hour, our energies, I'll, with kinesiology, I will touch and work with your muscles and your body and rub massage points and things. So I'm in close connection with you. So I come back out and I find myself in my own energy field again. But then I go into another distressed one. And if I do that all day, maybe I start to resonate with that. And I get distressed too. And in the early days of my work, I actually nearly gave it up because I would feel teary all of a sudden. And then one day I had someone's pain go up my arm and it stayed with me. And the woman said, "Now that feels better." And I carried it for several hours, and I wasn't going to have anything to do with it. And then I started to talk to many people. Does it happen to you? What do you do about it? And I learned a few things. One of them is to understand that love is actually stronger than all of that. So if I get to a loving space when I'm with a client, no matter how disturbed they are, I don't burn out because of that. So they can actually come and rest in my energy for a little while. So they'll feel better when they leave just for having had that connection with me. And so we're not actually talking about having to be careful of being radiated, because if you're in a space of love, nothing's going to affect you. It's like you can feel the people, you can hear them, but you don't take it on, you don't go into that space with them.
Just, we did a few things before we started talking. And just from those few things, and I saw how you worked and so on. And so then I could see where you, as a therapist, you could even tune into your own body and ask permission to go into different energies and saying, you could probably clear it and just say, is it okay? Is it 60% okay that we go into this energy? And is it okay that you could release it within 15 minutes or what do you want to do? And I could see where you could probably have a discourse like that.
One of the things that I do in my work is I help people find their own way of clearing their stuff. So what it means is I'm a facilitator in their process. So they trust me enough to be a guide, but I don't do the dissolving, they do. I give them options and tools and take them on the journey. But it's actually the person themselves that gives up the blockage, that lets it go. I don't make it go.
Yeah, so you're not trying to be a magician.
No.
Right, or like an energy, with an energy wand or anything.
I think I made a decision that where I wanted to be was in that place where I could help and assist somebody to find that space in themselves. It wasn't up to me to do that, like to be the healer or to be the magician, as you say, but
right.
To be the person who will guide that person who's with me to their own power to heal themselves.
That's exactly it. You're empowering instead of just stealing people's power and saying, I'll do it for you. And then, I don't know, that's really not...
there may be a place for that, I don't know, but it's just not where I feel comfortable to actually go in there. It's like I've been intruding on there.
I remember I had a guru once, and he used to tell the story about in another lifetime, he had a master only for a few moments, and that master just touched him on the forehead with a stick and then he was down on the forest path.
Huh.
And I always wanted to buy a stick, like a kind of a fancy wand or something, and give it to him and say, touch me, would you?
Yeah.
It's just exactly what you're saying. You could be really sucked into it because a lot of people might like that or want that or want you to practice on them.
Yeah, well, some people who don't know what I do have come and said, well, fix me. I say, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place. I'm not fixing anybody. But we can go on a journey and see what you need to do to make the changes that are needed to get you from where you are to where you want to go. It's where I'm at, even though I'm fascinated by the Hawaiian thing of taking in a disturbed energy and healing it within yourself. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by it, but it's not where I want to be at this time.
That's an old Shiva story, I think, where the ocean was poisoned by something and he drank the whole ocean.
Yeah, well, there is a story of a Hawaiian shaman who healed people with mental illness that way. He would take in their disturbance and then heal himself. So it is an interesting thing to look at. But it's so, for me, it just feels right to just be there with someone, say, look, you have all that amazing ability within you. Let's go on the journey and find it.
Yeah, sure. You know, I maybe I'll make an admission, you know, because you talked about the aura and we touched, right? And we said the aura. But I reset your chair before we started so that you were closer, you know, than any of the other people I'd talked to. Somehow I wanted to be closer to you. So then I don't know whether I thought you would talk softly or that I wanted to speak softly, or whether it was just somehow I wanted to be in that aura or closer to it, or somehow that I did do that though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that complicated. You know, in the end, if you come to that place of love, not somebody loving you, but it's a feeling of love when you're with somebody, and that really has to do with letting go of all judgments about them. Like how do you know about them? You haven't lived their story, you haven't been their places. This is just a person who's honoring you right now with asking you to take them on their journey. And so I love my work.
I bet.
Yeah. And I love, you know, teaching people as well. But, you know, now I think if more people learn some really basic self-maintenance, you know, we know that, well, most people know that a bit of exercise is good for them, go for a good walk is good for them. Well, what I teach clients and students is simple exercises they can do that actually tune their body up. And simply making the choice to do that is already, I want to take care of me, you know? And so I call it chi tonics.
Mm-hmm.
And
before, when we were talking about health, you know, and being blocked up and needing exercise to move things, to get the movement going, and somehow I thought, like, really, I mean, your liver, your lymphatic system, maybe the kidneys, if those are in good shape, you can withstand anything, right? Because out of your liver comes good digestion. And I have a feeling that the lymphatic system, you know, turns to gelatin, basically, doesn't flow. And
well, I think everything gets stagnant if you're not, if you don't move your body, because your lymph only moves through body movement, doesn't have a pump like your heart has. No. So when you move your body, your lymph moves. And the other thing is you need to get oxygen right out into all your tissue too. And if you're just stagnant, even your circulation starts to become less effective and less oxygenized. So being physical, moving your body is part of a good health program. And you can do that. It doesn't mean you have to go to a gym. You can do gardening and dancing and, you know, running after children, but you need to be physical.
So listening and non-judgment, maybe that's where we can really interact with our communities, you know, and heal them too, something. And listening, you know, receiving, because so much about our feeling and our relationship possibilities seems related to how we're received and how we can receive. We can't receive ourselves, so then we can't listen to ourselves. So then we're kind of like in the dark, you know, we're blanked out. And then even spiritual teachings are finding that there's not much of a self there. You know, that self is all trumped up, you know, it's kind of made out of this idea and that idea, but, you know, substantially, what is it? And so then in a way, it seems like there's no... It can get to be a belief that there's nothing there to cherish or nothing there to, you know, that you're just hollow, and that everything gets focused, at least on a man, you know. It's easy for me to focus out. But I'd always done it anyhow, focused out, so then it was just kind of like a natural progression just to say, oh, well, I'm not needy. So then I like as if focus only followed needs, right? And then just being okay wasn't worth focusing on. Could that be something?
Well, our basic needs are food, water, shelter, and, you know, some relationship. Kind of with tribal animals, I think. We are humans who need other humans to interact with. But besides that, I look at it quite differently. I think we are all made of the divine energy that flows through all living things. And so what an opportunity. You've got a body to have an experience with, you know. So we need to look after it. And that's probably why I think a lot of the stories and the blockages we have, then once we get it, they're not that huge. We can let them go and be more joyous. Who said we need to be serious, you know, and heavy? We can be more, we can be more light, joyful.
So when we're joyful, you know, it goes in a circle, right? Because when we're joyful, we take care of our body and say, whoa, this is a great deal, you know. But when we're feeling blue, we think, oh, God, who cares, you know, what the heck, let this thing die, you know, the whole thing. We even get suicidal, you know, right? And so then suicidal doesn't necessarily mean doing it off in yourself. It just means kind of like not caring for anything and just letting it kind of go stale, right? And then that can be both physically and also psychologically, you know, because people go into dementia and stuff like that, which, you know, there must be some payback there of numbing to pain, right?
Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's probably a payback in everything we do. A perceived
Maybe that's
payback,
just an experience,
right?
we're having and having to deal with. See what it's like. I don't know. I you know, we can ask the question, why is it so? Or we can say, well, I'm here. Let's make it a good experience. That's where I'm at. I want to make it a good experience. I have this opportunity.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. And, you know, you can say, well, what's good and what's bad? You know, later on you may change your mind. But I think if you can respond to experiences with a sense of peacefulness, then in the end it will be an okay experience anyway. Instead of the constant judging of that should be and that shouldn't be and we should have that.
We have to kind of formulate that as an experiment, I suppose, because so many people think that the peacefulness is like a reward at the end of a successful journey. And then I guess there's a belief that if we feel bad, we'll strive harder to get to where we've said we're going to go. And it's kind of the carrot and the stick. Some people are stick people, and not too many people are carrot people.
Well, you can take any moment in anyone's life and you can say, well, what's good about this person's life? What can they be grateful for? And you can focus on that. Or you can say, oh, what's not working? What haven't they done yet? What haven't they achieved? Where they're not good enough? And it's all there. It's where we want to put our focus. Mm-hmm. And so I prefer to put the focus on what I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that really works for a lot of people, and other people I don't feel that they don't want to be grateful. They want to be grateful, but they just feel like that's not problem solving, that somehow they believe in problem solving. And maybe problem solving is so similar to problem creating that they get confused, and that somehow you have to step around them too. You can't solve them that way.
I don't think that being grateful stops you being motivated. It doesn't stop me from being motivated to do things. Like I'm grateful that I have those tools and skills that I can share with people. I love what I do. It's not like I've got a job so one day I have a life. This is my life. I enjoy it. And it doesn't always run smoothly. It doesn't always work out exactly the way you set out you'd like it to. But within that, there is still the when I decide to pay attention to that gratitude, everything else, I'm more motivated to do what I do, and I do it with pleasure. So I don't see any reason why I should create some problems for myself so I can solve them. So I'll be more successful with what? I don't know. There's a lot of things I'd like to do, and I just go like, yep, as it happens, it will roll along and will happen, and I just keep that creative process happening.
Here I am in a new country, and I've done it before in other countries. Of course, other ones I did it where I couldn't speak. This one I can speak. Oh. But there's enough different about it that I feel, I don't know, I feel pretty free for a long enough period that I can, and I've had some experiences where I've tried kind of just being without any agenda. And I have a mini agenda, like I bring all these equipments and stuff, but really I don't have any project that someone's there's no bottom line to there's no bottom line to any project or anything like that. And if I do 5 hours on it today and no hours on it for the next 5 days, it's probably no different, right? And so then I don't know, sometimes it seems like in life there's always so many constraints that you never can say, well, I'm just going to cut myself loose and make an experiment and see where I run into, follow my nose and listen to people.
You've just done it, haven't you?
Huh?
You're just doing that now?
I'm just doing it now, yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, and I set a premise up just so that people can understand me better, right? Because if I didn't have a premise, I could just say, well, I'll just go some country and start walking, right? And see where I end up, right? There's not much premise there. They say, what are you guys doing? Oh, I'm just asking questions and learning things. Maybe that would be interesting or not. Somehow I've tickled people's interest by saying that I've got a system and a skill and so then, to share about me, like what's really going on here. I'm just trying to see. I'm trying to contact and be received and to receive. And then to, I guess my excuse to do it is that I can these guys can receive too. And then that seems like straightforward enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can all play the game. And I don't know, it's pretty exciting, and it's pretty fulfilling, and it's, you know, exciting in the sense that I never know what's happening. Not like minute to minute, like I'm ending up in jail or something. But
what we talked about earlier, that makes the way you're thinking about that, you're quite excited about that anticipation of something interesting is going to happen. Therefore, that makes you feel good, so you take action, you get in touch with people, you meet with them, you set it up, and you have your discussions. And that's your result, that, you know, that you've met the people and you've had a good time. But that all started off with that attitude, and with that, you still had that the intention of, you know, discovery.
Yeah, I have an intention of discovery, and then, you know what? If I have any skill, I'm probably like a traveling salesman, you know, in my wagon, and you know, selling snake oil or something like that, and say, look at what I'm doing. And I've got this tool called enthusiasm, which you know, I don't totally trust it, because sometimes it takes you away from the moment and into this dog and pony show thing, you know, jumping around and saying how great everything is. And I really appreciate when I meet someone like you that's very still, and it allows me to look back and say, well, this is cool, you know, but it's not my life, and just see what comes out of it, right? You know, and I probably could really, I'm a kind of a guy that can really push things to their limit. So, you know, if I can do 3 talks in a day, I can do 5, or if I can end up with 50 talks, I might could end up with 100. You know, and what to do with them, you know, just throw them in the pile. But I do organize them a little bit so people can pick through them. And I don't know. I mean, I think there's a great healing that's going to be happening in this coming year. It's happening right now, right? And I did go out on the street a few times, and who knows, maybe I'll just cut myself loose in the U.S. when I get back, and I'll just drive around from city to city to the occupies and start to coach. You know, I'll just coach something that I find here. You know, I'll just coach that we're all in this together, that I won't say words like love, and I won't use buzzwords and jargon words and stuff like that, but I'll just explain things in a great way, that however I learn to explain it, that I don't know right now, you know, but I'll just say that something about a big-heartedness without using those words, something about how this is such an opportunity that we actually can be concerned for the human family and not have to cover any. We can take things out from under the covers that we're embarrassed about and that we feel bad about. And we know, as a Western civilization, we have big feet and we tromp all around the world, and we're probably embarrassed and hurt from that. And then maybe there's so much healing that can happen about that. And then the most important thing, you know, I think that we can learn, and that I want to learn, and maybe you can help me, because we were just speaking of it in a way with speaking how your clients come and how they have a certain energy running really strong. And I believe that so many experiences in life create energy, right? And the ones that are probably the strongest are negative in a way, like pain and injustice, because you can't really just pull off of those. You know, when they come full on, and there's no way that you can just slither out necessarily. Whereas if a real high experience comes in, you know, no matter what it is, you could go in your bag and search for your camera, right, and say, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this, you know. And so in a way, you're ditching out on the experience, right? And there's, you know, and what do we know what a positive experience is? We never go to depth. You know, it's got to be some kind of a huge meditator or somebody that can really take it far. But most of us just take a little drip of love and say, whoa, I tasted love. That's enough. But sadness and injustice can just come in like a bomb, you know, like a war zone. And so then that can come so thick. And that can make the really intense energies and we don't know what to do with that energy. See, we have no idea how to transform that energy into something that could be creative. And so then, what I'm saying is that is the reason for all separation. Separation is because we don't know what to do with energy of each other, of world pain. And you get where I'm going? If we knew what to do with that energy.
But see, I think that's the same thing of just one at a time. One person at a time. You know the story about the starfish, yeah? When all these starfish were washed into the beach and were all dying on the beach, and there's a child walking along, throwing them back in the water, and some person came walking along and said, "Why do you bother? They'll all die." He said, "Not this one, not this one, not this one." I think that's how it will have to change, because there is such, and I think South Africa has done a lot of beautiful group, working with groups and again, a very human healing from those kinds of things. It's
from apartheid?
Yeah. And I think...
What does Australia have to learn from South Africa?
Well, I think...
Have you done those kind of groups?
I think we're a long way from actually understanding Indigenous people as a culture, to understand them and to actually have a very kind of, from both sides, respectful relationship. A long way from that as a country. It's such a different world. The Indigenous world is very, very different, and we've been wanting them to fit into our world, into our laws and our way of life, and they can't really keep having their way of life they used to have. It's a very sad situation, and I think there have been generations of Indigenous people have been taken away from their parents to be brought up as good citizens, and that has done a lot of damage to them.
Yeah, I always want to ask about that, because I've heard of the Stolen Generation,
yeah.
And I made a famous movie about it. But I mean, I never said, my question would be like, what's the follow-up on those stolen children that are now adults? Where are they, and are they somehow over that trauma, or what's going on? But I don't know if you're the expert to ask.
I'm not an expert.
I don't have to ask you, if you but that's just a question that
I wouldn't be
I sat with.
The person who would really know a whole lot about it, except that I don't think those traumas have healed, because they perpetuate in the new parents who have not been brought up in a way. Like, where do we learn parenting, for example? We learn it from our own childhood, and it's like they've been taken from one way of looking at the world and living into another, and they don't quite know where they fit, a lot of them, the ones that live in the cities. I think there are moves on the way too, by their own people, to actually heal their children and their...
Maybe I can be a little more clear, because when I said world pain, or letting it, or the energy created by world pain, it sounded like I want to fix a global situation, and then you said one at a time is kind of like the way to do it. And but I didn't really mean that. I just meant somehow to acknowledge it and let it in, and be able to let it in, and be able to kind of hold the space of that, of whatever that energy would be. And then I feel that would... And
then change it?
No. I mean, I don't know. I think it would change, I think it would change by itself if we held the space for it, because then, the very fact of not allowing a space for it is called numbness. And so then if that numbness went down, the numbness ratio, somehow, because we were okay with Well, I mean, even when the Australian government made an apology to the Aborigines, that's a huge jump. You know, however that went, I think there was other things that went down at that time that were not so well received, but at least it seemed to be unique. You know, I don't think we've ever apologized. I mean, I guess we pay money to our indigenous, but you know, you guys do too. But that never works. It doesn't not work either. I mean, it's not better not to pay the money or support people. I'm not saying that, but that's not the complete story, right? You can't buy it off. You can't buy your way out of stuff.
No.
So, but you can sort of acknowledge your way toward resolution, or toward what do you call it? Not a settlement, but somehow a reconciliation. You have to first start acknowledging, don't you?
Yeah.
Then I think we could see ourselves better. We'd start listening to ourselves better. If, you know, okay, that's number one. And I'm just saying acknowledge, and not knowing what to do with it, you know, and not having a program like how to fix it, or you know, not having a justice program or nothing, you know, just saying, let's get it out.
Acknowledging and accepting that things have happened. Acceptance is always the beginning of a healing process. If we deny it, if we're angry about it, if we're resentful about it, if we're numb or switched off, in separation,
that's our main deal for Western society. We're switched off, right?
And so acknowledging and accepting is the beginning.
That's number one thing I want to go at. And then number two is that, you know, a lot of times people say, they'll actually say this, you know, in the spiritual world, that once you start to feel your connection with everything, and maybe they might even go so far to say oneness and so on, there's no way that you're going to really offend, you know. If you realize that's my little finger, you're not going to just slash at it, right? So then, but then that begs everybody kind of like on having an understanding, which everybody's not going to have an understanding, or at least, and then I say, well, what is there? Does that mean there's a critical mass, or how's it going to really change anything? You know, a bunch of us can get together and say, like, we really want to make a difference in the world, and I think we'd have to go out and do something, but we might just say we're creating the space for, you know, we might even not be the kind of people that want to do anything, you know, I don't know. But so then what I'm saying is, like, we have to give some kind of attention to the institutions. See, the institutions are kind of like the laws of the land, and the way things are divided up, and the way ownership works, and the way investment works, and all those things that really kind of lean in too much in one direction or another, and don't really kind of go down the center anymore. And you know, that's like built-in favoritism. And I think that we need to look at those things, you know, whether that's trying to cure the world or not, but some things are blatantly obvious, I think. And it's not all that rocket science as it might be. Right? So people shun that and say, oh, you're a fixer, you're going to save the world, you know, but everyone's out there saving the world, and they're doing more damage than anything. Just back off, you know. You're not ready to do that. Well, then when am I going to be ready? You know? I'm just coaching engagement, I guess.
Well, I think the whole idea of doing things locally with that intention that as more of us get to do things locally and with the people we meet, that will make a difference. I think it does. It's like, you know, there's a group here in town, they look after the dunes. They do that in their free time. But dunes are living, and they need to have enough plants on them. They need to be looked after, so the big tides don't wash them out to sea. And a lot of places along the coast have now groups that will look after the dunes. They've just come to understand that they're areas that need looking after. But if every town, you know, along the beach does their area, then the whole coast will be looked after much better.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example, see, because that's an example where right-thinking people that come together to create an objective of beauty and love of their space, right? But I'm saying that even that could be, everything. I don't trust totally in institutions, but I mean, that could somehow be.
See, I think as a community, there'll be people who may have, the kind of way of understanding or the institution side that will say, well, that's not healthy in our community, that's where we work. Someone else says, well, it's the dunes I want to look after, and I'll look after people's emotions. It's like we don't have to do everything. Not every person has to do everything. It's okay that we work in the area where our energy works really well. And no,
but I mean, like when people get interested in something, they might say, okay, well, why don't we just go down to Canberra and say that we want some kind of regulations about what you can do on the dunes, and then some kind of funding to keep them up, because this is such an important part of our heritage, that we're giving to our children. That it's actually a money maker with tourism. That's actually so many things, right? You can acknowledge those things and then take an action too, and then everyone doesn't have to go out and plant plants on the dunes, but they could say, oh yeah, I support that, I'll vote for that too.
That's how change comes about.
Right.
Yeah, when you said, is there a critical mass? I think there is. There comes a time when enough people do enough to affect their community or their circle of influence, maybe you want to call
That's what I do, like I put things on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, right, people can listen and say, hey, I want to do that too, Not that I have a program that I'm working on. Mostly I just tell about things. Yeah. And I say, well, that must be enough, if somebody wants to tell something, come to me and I'll put it up. If they don't know how to do it, maybe they know how to do it better than I do already, But that's what I do.
That's cool.
So, say more about what you do now, because we're going to share ourselves to each other.
Of my work?
Well, your work, your passion, your love, anything you got going.
Well, I feel passionate about the joy you see, for example, in a child who comes in and believes that he's dumb, he can't learn, and to see the joy in that face when there's just spelled the encyclopedia backwards to me. Little things like that are just so much fun. And it's like assisting people to find that place where they suddenly get it. Yes, I can do it. I can feel better about myself. I can go out into the world and do my thing. I can get healthier again. I can make peace with things that happened in the past. So no two people will be the same. They will come with where they're at and where they'd like to be. And then we'll have an assessment of where they're at energetically, nutritionally, environmentally. We sort of look at all the contributing factors. And then we'll say, if you want to go from where you are to where you want to go, what do you need to stop doing? What do you need to change? What do you need to bring in? So there is enough change to propel you where you want to go. And so it becomes really exciting because, where people are at is uniquely different, and where they want to go is their own story as well. And to actually walk with them along that way is really useful, and see that each person is the authority about who they are, like what's happened to them. They know everything that's ever happened to them that has had some emotional power to it. So positively or negatively, what gave us strong feelings, we remember for the future. So if you put your finger in a flame, it burns you, you don't have to do it again tomorrow. So a lot of what we learn is already programmed in from when we were, really small. And some of that is not helping us go where we want to go. So if, for example, I was told that, you can't follow your passion, who makes money out of music? You have to become an accountant. And that person's now 20 years later, stressed out and sick accountant. Then those events and understanding those events, they have to make peace with that before they can really make the changes to get better. And so what happened emotionally, often, things like death in the family, that when people were young and that person just disappeared out of their lives, has affected them, where they may start to believe I wasn't lovable, otherwise that person wouldn't have left me. But that's not true, but that's a child's perception, and that then affects the way they do things and what they expect out of relationships. So when we do a full protocol, that's basically what we do. We look at an energy pictures. What are the acupuncture meridians doing in relation to what's going on for you? Where are the stressors in your life? How much stress, how much willingness do you have to make a change? Sometimes people have zero willingness to make a change. I mean, they do. They're turned up in my clinic on a conscious level, but subconsciously the body says, I have no energy to change. I've tried everything, I know nothing works. And so we set the kind of work out what's going on.
Well, it's so cool that you just do acknowledgement of that, because you test it and acknowledge it, and then from there it can reverse. You just say, because it reminds me of something called emotional freedom technique, but where they do a reversal kind of a process. Well,
see, emotional freedom technique is really one technique out of kinesiology that has become a whole system in its own right. So we use tapping acupuncture points sometimes, very specifically, rather than tapping all the points and making statements. We find out exactly what's going on and what will reverse it. We'll test what will reverse it. That's in one of the techniques that we use.
But that reversal is what I was referring to, because that's what you're saying. You sometimes find 5 layers of reversal.
Yes, so very similar. To get over the layers is very similar, but the real issue needs a lot more in-depth work than that. So what it means is, if I don't want to do anything about not wanting to do anything about my problem, emotional freedom technique, that kind of thing, if you find exactly where to tap, that will reverse it. That will take you out of those layers. But the actual initial issue, which may be I'm not worthy of taking good care of myself, it's very useful to find out where you decided that you weren't worthy of doing that. Yeah.
I can do something. Just lately, I kind of just put my finger on something about myself. That I wasn't really questioning. Really, I don't know if it was holding me back, but somehow I resented being programmed as a child. I feel like I didn't want anyone pushing me in any direction, and early on. Well, somehow maybe I tried one time to please, and it backfired on me. So then I just said, no, never again. And of course I didn't say that, but that's how I acted after that. And I just realized that, okay, I had an issue with my father, and he was trying to help me. I was the firstborn. And so he was really, I was the first kid, and he was really trying to do a good job on me, just raise me and help me and care for me and love me and not give up on me and all that stuff. And so then he was at me all the time. And after that initial issue, I just decided that no matter what he does, I'll do the opposite. And I got worse and worse and dumber and dumber and dumber,
Mm-hmm.
and more cut off and more blanked out. right? And more clumsy and everything. Somehow that was just happening. And then now when I realize that, it's just a big laugh, because like I know he was doing his best he could for me, and I don't blame him for anything whatsoever. And I know I was just stuck in this thing that just made it look like I was really, really stupid and slow. And so then it's just all okay now to me. It's all totally okay. But I could see that whole process that I really believed in that for a long time, that I was really kind of like totally out of it.
Yeah, they're the kinds of things that you discover. And then once you've acknowledged where the person starts from, you say, well, what do you need to do about it? And there's a system that we go through. Are we going to make some corrections or some change in the body's electrical system? We're looking at emotions. If it's emotional, do we need to actually trace it in age, where it all started? And there's lots of different stories we use to actually change the emotional programming. What about nutrition? Do we need to look at the body function? So the functional energy of different organs, the whole digestive process, etc. Toxicity, pathways like chemical pathways in the body. What about physical? Are there any, is the actual body constricted in relation to that goal? And it's interesting, the more something really stresses us out, the less flexible we become. So sometimes you can actually work on the body to open up to being more flexible in relation to something.
When you say body constricted, would that also mean your blood pressure?
Yeah. Yeah, blood pressure. But mainly flexibility. It's like sometimes people get like, if they bend over to touch their toes, sometimes at the beginning they can like touch their knees, and after they can touch the floor because the body just let go. And so we work with however much time we have available in the body's priority system. So I test in which area do we start working on this issue for you, and in which, how are we going to unravel it?
Yeah, right. I experienced that where you have a very direct way of just finding a priority system. You get down to the 1%. Right away.
Yeah, because see, I'll give you an example of when you wouldn't be doing it in the right sequence. It was like I had a client some years ago who suffered chronic fatigue syndrome, and so where Abundant Health is and where she was a long way to get up there. So she steadily got better to about halfway, and then it showed up toxicity as doing the next thing, and she'd had root canal fillings in her 2 front teeth, and that was going to be the next priority. And it's a big thing when you look at your 2 front teeth. But she decided she wanted to keep getting better. Well, that was so infected under there. She got, like, when that all got cleaned up, she got to about there, and then I didn't see her for about 7 years. She went somewhere else, and when she came back to the area, she came and did some more work with me. And the first session we went straight to her core issue, which was a really big childhood trauma, and that helped her get well. And it was like, why didn't we find that when she first came? And I said to her that you would have maybe gotten better faster if we found that beginning. She said she wouldn't have had the strength to deal with that at that time. So it was unfolding exactly in the right sequence for her. And so it's not always where we think we should go, or that we should go for the biggest thing first. It's we unravel just to what they can cope with.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I trust that process, that they're guiding me as to what they need from my skills. I keep talking about having a smorgasbord of tools and saying, well, what would you like from all of that? You can choose any of those things I have on there, which is all the skills I have. The skills I learned from kinesiology, but also skills I've learned along the way from other places. And there's a system of actually finding that. So that's what I do in clinic. I teach students to get Australian qualifications to do this sort of work. And I teach them also to do an international qualification. And besides that, I've been developing my own things that I want to give out to people as that self-help, the prevention, that kind of self-care that you can easily do. Like, you know, when you say to people who are stressed out, for example, you should go meditate, you should do relaxation therapy, you need to do this. But when you're in the middle of a project and it's full on, you're not going to go and do that. But, you know, you may massage a few points on the body that calm you right down. It only takes you a minute or two.
Is that what you meant by when you mentioned emotional first aid?
No, that is another
different.
one that I've done. That's another course that I've produced to prevent. That's more like, you know, if you have a friend who's just had a death in the family. Most people are really uncomfortable being around that. They don't know what to say, don't know what to do for them. And, you know, loss happens in many, many ways. And you know, when I talk to people, if they've had a trauma like that in the past, what helped them, what didn't help them, and what comes into my clinic with the unhealed ones, that workshop really grew out of that, on some of the things, simple things you can do to be there. Like we talk about being with somebody, being present with somebody, hearing them, acknowledging them.
We don't know what to do. I remember a time that I worked with this guy in my business, and I really liked him, and I think he liked me, you know. And then I think he kind of passed out at a stop sign, and they took him in the hospital, and there was cancer everywhere. And he lived 2 more months. And I couldn't call him up because I realized I don't have that technology to talk. You know, all I could say is get well soon, but it wasn't in the cards, you know. That's all I knew about sickness. And I didn't really, you know, I came up with a blank there, total blank, and I really felt empty.
Yeah. So in the physical first aid, it gives you a whole protocol. Do this first, second, third, fourth, you know, as it goes through. Well, I modelled that. So first, second, third.
Clean the breathing passage, right?
Once you're down a few levels, you know, up to you've done the first 6 or 7 things, now you have a choice. You could do this, 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 and this. And it's really helpful. People who've taken the class, they've found that now they're much more equipped. Yeah.
It's so relaxing just being with you, and glad I moved your chair closer, and just feel so at home to be with you. And you know, I would really feel a lot of trust to be in any of your processes or any of your classes or any of your counseling. So then you really have a good bedside manner or couch side.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Parijat.
Thank you. It was enjoyable speaking with you.
Parijat Wisma. So let's all thank her for adding this to our day.
Thank you for giving me space in your homes.
Goodbye for this time.